Hi everyone and welcome back to my channel. So I've been thinking a lot about my language learning journey from starting to learn a language, from starting to learn Korean about 3 years ago now to the point I am at now, which is learning Korean, Mandarin, Italian a bit, and then just about started Japanese. So along that way I haven't had any formal lessons, so the only language lessons I've really had was previously when I was at school, which I had some Mandarin lessons, but other than that the languages I learned at school are not the languages that I'm currently learning. So I've not really had any like formal lessons, or it's all been independent study, self-study. So I thought today I would talk about some of the mistakes I have made along the way with self-study, things that if I was going to start again I wouldn't do, just to help people out if they're at the beginning of their journey. So the first thing I wouldn't do if I was going to restart my journey would be focusing so much on grammar. So when I first started learning Korean, I found like a really good source that most people do, which is Talk to Me in Korean, which obviously is a great resource. I still use it a lot now with all the grammar lessons, it's great. But when I first started, all I was doing was doing the free grammar session before I paid for like any of the other little bits, which meant that I was just learning so much grammar but not really any vocab. And the grammar doesn't really mean a lot if you don't have the vocab to use in the sentences, if you know what I mean. So even though it's a great resource for grammar, that specific course, and if you buy or use any other courses in Talk to Me in Korean, they are great. It is a great resource. I don't want to say anything bad about it. It is really good and I still use it. But I was so focused on just doing those lessons each time, and in those lessons a lot of the time they use the same vocab, so I wasn't really broadening the vocab that I knew. I was really just focusing on grammar, which, one, I'm not a huge grammar fan, so I don't know why I did that, and I don't know many people that are a huge grammar fan, but I mean some people might be. But two, it wasn't very helpful when I wanted to like start trying to talk to people, because I literally had such limited vocab, so much grammar knowledge but such limited vocab. So if I was going to start again, I would focus on learning like practical things at the beginning that would be useful for me, and learning like basic past and present tenses, and then learning vocab I can use in those, rather than learning all of these different grammar with like a few words to put in there, which isn't very helpful in the long run. So when I'm learning languages now, it's basic grammar with more vocab, and then once you've got like a solid amount of vocab down, then you can expand on the grammar. Well, that is how I now prefer to do it. The second thing as well, which I am still guilty of now, I did a video about this I think about a week or two ago, which is about taking long breaks. Now, long breaks is something that makes it very, very difficult to kind of pick back up again where you were, and I know that I normally have really long breaks because I put a big amount of pressure on myself to have really long study sessions, and then I can't keep up with those study sessions, so I don't really do any studying at all. So I think if I was going to start again, I would make a plan, but more of a plan to think, right, so on these days I normally have like a couple of hours spare, so as part of those couple of hours I'm going to put half an hour aside to do some language learning. Or for example, I really love Lingodeer, and obviously I use Duolingo for Italian. I would start again by mainly using those apps just to try and get your head into learning first of all. So it's so much easier when it's like 10 minutes in the morning. I often do my Duolingo lesson while I'm getting ready in the morning. When I used to get public transport to work, I would do it on the bus, you know, things like that. Or like when I'm going to visit people, I'm getting the train, I'll just do a few lessons because I'm sat there, and otherwise I'm just going to scroll through TikTok. So I may as well do some lessons. But yeah, I think I can put too much pressure on myself to do too much. So if I was going to start again, I would probably look at when I could study, like what is easy for me to fit in, rather than giving yourself such a big amount to learn. Because I know that if I had managed to stay consistent for these last like 4-5 years, well 3-4 years, I'd have probably made so much more progress than I actually have done if I'd have managed to just do like 20 minutes a day rather than like 2 hours one day and then not touching it again for like 2 weeks. So yeah, try and fit small bits in where you can rather than pushing yourself to do too much that you know you're not going to be able to do for the long term. Another thing that I used to do a lot at the beginning, and I'm still do it sometimes now, is worry about making mistakes. So I don't know if you use it, but there's like Tandem or HelloTalk, or even like having lessons with teachers on italki. That would really put me off in the beginning, or not in the beginning, but you know, even like a year or so ago, it would really put me off because I was so worried about making mistakes and them judging me and worrying about not getting it quite right. Now, there's nothing wrong with not getting it quite right. I think it's very hard to sometimes think about how good it is, the fact that you're managing to learn another language, or you're putting in this effort to learn another language. That's like amazing enough as it is. If it's not perfect, it really doesn't matter. I always kind of think like when somebody's talking to me in English and English isn't their native language and they make a mistake, I don't judge them for it. So why would a native speaker of the language you're learning that you're speaking to judge you for it? They don't, you know. We all have to learn somehow, and there's nothing wrong with making mistakes. So yeah, I would like go on my way to not talk to them, even though I know it's really beneficial for my language learning process to talk to people in my language that I'm learning. I would try and avoid doing it, but since I've kind of overcome that, it's helped me make so much progress in the languages that I'm learning. So specifically Korean, I normally try and talk to people in. And also, you know, it's very easy to learn like textbook vocab, but that's not always the way that people, you know, in that language particularly speak. Obviously not the majority of it, but you know, people have like slang words and stuff like that that a textbook is never going to teach you. So speaking to people from the native language is super helpful, and it will help increase your ability so fast. I definitely recommend it, and don't worry about making mistakes. Another thing that I did at the beginning of my journey when I was independently studying Mandarin was that I would learn like the test vocab for the HSK, or I would pick out like the 100 most common words in Mandarin, or however many it was. And that is just not the best way to go around about it, because most of those words you may not even use, it might not be relevant to you. So my advice would be to try and learn the vocab that you think is going to be useful for yourself. Obviously, like the 100 most common words is probably going to be useful for everybody, but like if we're talking the 1,000, it might not be. So why do you need to learn basketball at the beginning if you don't care about basketball and you prefer football, you know, things like that. Like try and learn the vocab that you're most likely to use in sentences, because otherwise you're wasting your time and you're probably not going to be interested. Like if you're going to practice, you want it to be able to relate to yourself. So yeah, don't just pick like 1,000 most common words in. Learn vocab that actually suits what you will be talking about, rather than just random vocab. Because doing it that way, when you're learning specific vocab that, you know, relates to yourself, you're more likely to be able to build up conversations quicker, you know, speak about your interests and hobbies and what you do and things like that. Whereas this random vocab you'll learn and probably forget because you never use it. So yeah, definitely learn tailored vocab to yourself if you can. It makes it so much easier to learn, like become like a bit conversational than just learning the 1,000 most common words. Those are the few things that if I ever started again I would definitely try to avoid. I would love to know what anybody else's tips or mistakes they made when they first started language learning, because we all made mistakes. So yeah, I'd love to know what you would do differently. And thank you for watching this video, and I will see you in the next one. Bye.